Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Soccer Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. We have a great show for you today. We will be covering the UCL draw. We'll do a full reaction to the UCL draw. We'll talk about Real Madrid draw with Las Palmas, another disappointing result for them in the league. We'll discuss some of the more exciting matchups in this Champions League group stages that we're going to get based on the draw. That we'll also be talking about in segment 1. We'll talk about the reported interest that Arsenal have for the likes of Raheem Sterling. We know Chelsea are trying to get him out of the club. Or they're both trying to work their way out of, the contract. So, and then, stick around for the end of the show where I'll be giving you my daily edition of my reactions to some of the top soccer headlines going on in the soccer world. Before we start off, though, I just wanted to remind ya, if you've got a question, if you have a question, please use this new form of method we have, the super chat method. With the super chat method, with the super chat method, you can write in a question and I'll be able to answer it right away. It's a great new feature we have now, so that y'all can be more interactive, more responsive on the show, and it's just a new way for y'all. Now, your input is a big part of what makes this show great, and we thrive on your energy and insight. Whether it's a quick comment, a thoughtful question, or an opinion you just have to share, don't hesitate to drop it in the chat. Now, if you want to make absolutely sure that your message stands out and gets featured on the show, there's an easy way to do that as well. Use the super chat feature. Just click the $ at the bottom of the chat box to send in your super chat. This guarantees that your message gets on the air, and it's also a fantastic way to support our channel. We rely on your support to keep bringing you the sports content you love, and we appreciate every bit of it. So go ahead, let us know what you're thinking. Hit that super chat button, and let's keep this show as interactive and exciting as possible. And if you prefer, you can also go to the GSMC's podcast.net to tip, donate, and leave a comment or question there. We couldn't do what we do without your amazing support, and we're so thankful to have you as part of our community. But yeah, we have to start off though with this new Champions League draw. Now on the screen, y'all can see the pot 1 teams, what they were drawn up against. The pot 1 teams, which was Real Madrid, Manchester City, Bayern Munich, PSG, Liverpool, Inter Milan, Borussia Dortmund, Leipzig, and Barcelona. You can see all the pot 1 matchups that we have on the screen, right? But there's also some big teams that are in the other pots. Arsenal being in one of the pots, as a pot 2 team. I think that's having to face Arsenal as a pot 2 team is really rough. Like, that's the worst possible option out of all the pot 2 teams. So, Inter Milan, who have to play Arsenal, at least they get to play them at home. That's a rough one for them. PSG, having to go away to the Emirates, that's really, really rough for them. As a pot 2 team, that's the one pot 2 team you would like to avoid in Arsenal. But yeah, overall it was interesting. It's interesting. Now there is this new format, right? We all know this new format. I explained to y'all yesterday, to the best of my abilities. You basically have a 36 team league. Each team will face off. Each team has 8 opponents. 2 opponents from pot 1, 2 opponents from pot 2, 2 opponents from pot 3, 2 opponents from pot 4, and it don't matter. You'll play 2 teams from your own pot. So if you're a pot 1-2, you'll face off against 2 pot 1 teams. You face off against 2 pot 2 teams. You face off against 2. That's what we're seeing right here, all the pot 1 teams. So it makes it interesting. Top 8 automatically move on to the round of 16. 9th to 24th place. The next 16 spots will all face off in January as a home and a leg sort of playoff to reach the round of 16, essentially an extra round of the knockout stages, sort of like a play-in sort of situation to get into it. From 9th place to 24th place, the 16 teams half of them will move on to the knockout stages. So really, there is a benefit here of trying to finish top 8. You don't want to you don't want to play those extra 2 games in January to get into the Champions League knockout stages. If you don't have to, you try your best. And yeah, it's interesting here with this new Champions League format because the point tallies, the point things, it's not the same. Usually, you get about 9 points in the Champions League group stages. You're in decent positioning. You get anything more than 9 points, you should be comfortably moving on. It's a little bit different here with the fact that it's a 36 team league. I assume you basically, you play 8 games. I'd say, you want to aim for at least around, 8 games. If you win half of them, will be 12 points. I think that will be good enough to get you into from 8 to 16, the 9th to 24th spot. Now, if you're trying to win, you're trying to finish in the top 8, you realistically want about 16 points. You want to win about 5 of the games, five games, about maybe 6 depending on if you lose the remaining. But it's very, very confusing. Things are going to be very tightly congested as well, with only 8 games being played and this being a 36 team league. There could be a point that 6, 7, 8 sort of positioning. It could be to the point that 9th place and 17th place is all separated by 3 points. It will get that tight. It will be that congested. That's just how it's going to be in this sort of big league in a small game format, because 8 games is a small sample size for a whole 36 team league. But yeah, I will say though, you're seeing these ties right now. I don't want to break down exactly the ties, what are going to be the most fascinating ties, because we have a whole segment later on the show where we do that. But we do have some interesting games, and it does get interesting as with the pot 1 teams facing off. Yeah, that's very good. But also another thing is we have some very strong teams in pot 2 that will also be facing off against pot 1 teams, which will make it interesting. Like Arsenal is listed as a pot 2 team. Leverkusen, after going last season unbeaten in all competitions besides the Europa League final, they find themselves in pot 2, which for me, look, Borussia Dortmund, they reached the final, and obviously there needs to be a sort of element of respect there. But for me, they're not at the level of they're clearly not at the level of Leverkusen, and they're most definitely not at the level of Arsenal. Leipzig in European wise has been pretty decent, and I look forward to their game actually going to playing against Villa. That'll be actually a very fascinating tie. That'll be actually a very, very fascinating tie. Actually, Villa goes to Leipzig. But should they be a pot 1 team? In my opinion, I don't know. I do think I'd favor Leverkusen and Arsenal. Despite I do like what Leipzig has been as a team over the past few years. There's some real quality there. But yeah, going back to the main point, we get these juicy sort of ties in the Champions League group stages. I also think this will sort of make managers for these sort of pot 1 teams, for these sort of top teams, like a Guardiola, or Carlo Ancelotti. It'll make them second guess whether or not they should take these later games in the group stages more seriously. In the past, after 3 to 4 games, we see City roll out the youth team essentially. I don't think City will have that sort of luxury in this format because of how everything will be tightly congested, and chances are not, you're going to need a result in that final game to guarantee yourself in the top 8, because City will be playing against Inter and PSG. There will be some games that they can slip up. They have to also go away to Juventus, so that we'll get some interesting ties. There's no two ways about it. We'll get we'll get managers taking the sort of group stages more seriously. I think the managers will value the incentive of finishing in the top 8. I think that's very important. I think the last thing that these top level teams, this Manchester City, this Real Madrid, this Bayern Munich, this PSG, Liverpool, the last thing they want to do is play Barcelona, is to play an unnecessary tie in January, especially with the amount that people talk about, that everyone talks about in the football world, discussing how much football is being played, how much minutes to toll. I think there's going to be an extra incentive there to finish within the top 8, so you don't have to place that extra, sort of knockout stage game just to get into the knockout stages. That's something these top level teams will like to avoid. But no, I'll say this. I think we should be a little bit more patient. There's a little bit criticism over this new format. And I'm the first to criticize new things, especially when things are not broken, don't fix it. But for me, I have to say the Champions League group stages were broken. In my opinion, the Champions League group stages is some of the most boring football I have ever seen. The first week, maybe two, is a little interesting in the fact that Champions League has been gone for a while. But as you get to the later stages of the group stages, there's just so, unless there's some drama involved with the group, it can get interesting. But overall, especially with how many times in the past few years has City essentially played a youth team for the second half of their group stages? It happens countless time again. I want City to actually get tested, to have something to battle for to the final, group stage sort of games. I don't want to say that over and over again. Some of the weak groups that we've seen as well, we've seen one team and three sort of, teams that have no real ability to challenge them. I'm very excited for these group stages, and you're seeing some of these fascinating matchups, and these are only, the pot 1 teams facing off. There's some interesting ties all over the place, and we'll continue to discuss that more on the third segment of here. But right now, we will take a short break. When we come back, we'll talk about Real Madrid's draw with Las Palmas.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Before the break, we discussed the UCL draw. We'll move on to discuss Real Madrid. They have drawn with Las Palmas 1-1. Another disappointing result for Real Madrid, I have to say. I mean, that first half, such a lackluster, boring performance. Las Palmas, they took the lead early through Alberto. This game, by the way, was played at the Canaria in Las Palmas, just for context. But they took the lead early to Las Palmas did with Alberto Molero, and there was no response for Real Madrid in that first half. Lackluster, really hard game to watch, I have to say. Really, slow pace. There was no real efficiency in the way Real Madrid was going about it. No real energy. Just lackluster. And it just seemed like a bunch of players that were woken up like 30 minutes before game time, and they sort of had to salvage a performance. That's what it looked like in that first half. There was no runners. There was, you never thought Real Madrid were really threatening them whatsoever. And yeah, it was such lackluster first half, and it was really, really poor from Real Madrid, I have to say. Now they eventually in the second half they do turn it up a bit and create a little bit. Then they get very fortunate in the 69th minute or 67th minute or so, where they draw a penalty, which is for Las Palmas is a very unlucky penalty. So the ball gets driven into Vinicius's pass. Vinicius sort of mishits it. I believe he's trying to go for the goal. He sort of mishits it right into the path of I believe. I have no idea who that is actually. I think it was in the path of Brahim Diaz. No, into the path of Valverde. Valverde tries to get something on it, and it hits the sliding. Or is it Arde Güler? No, it's Arde Güler, and then it hits. It hits the Las Palmas player trying to slide it. Arde Güler himself sort of hits it, so the ball doesn't really go the area that the Las Palmas defender is expecting. And he's sort of slide tackling, trying to get for position, and it hits his backhand. And that's the sort of break that Real Madrid got to even get back into this game. But overall, and Vinicius Jr. puts the penalty away, which is actually interesting that Mbappe doesn't take the penalties. But overall, yeah, it was just another lackluster sort of bad performance from Real Madrid. Just no real runners, no real efficiency. They got the ball in areas that wasn't really dangerous. They didn't move the ball anywhere near fast enough. They moved the ball very, very slow. Very, very, very slowly. Mbappe, lackluster once again. Hasn't really been that sort of Look, with Mbappe, the criticism is going to come now playing for Real Madrid. This ain't PSG anymore, where you sort of can escape for your whole league campaign, and the only time there's real attention on you is the Champions League. No, when you're playing for Real Madrid, La Liga, it's attention day in, day out. And let's be for real, let's be frank about it. Mbappe has not been good enough. He has not been lively in dangerous areas. He hasn't been using his pace to get in behind like he's shown in the past that he can do. He hasn't shown his qualities. In fact, there's been moments that he's just trying to do too much, and he's not playing within the rhythm of the game, and it's really hard to watch because he's been making some poor mistakes and hasn't been as clinical as we expect him to be. And look, if we want to look at it from big picture, Mbappe has not really been the same since that 2022 World Cup final. You want to look at big picture. Mbappe had a pretty poor season last season for his what's the word? For his expectation. And then the European Championship, he was abysmal. Yes, he was dealing with the broken nose injury, but still, in the European Championship, he was abysmal, nowhere near to be seen. And then now he started off this sort of campaign for Real Madrid, and you know what? It has not been good enough. And yes, his natural position is playing off the left-hand side, cutting in onto his right foot. But, when you're a top player playing, joining Real Madrid, you got to be able to adapt. And, what he's produced in terms of him as a number 9 for Real Madrid so far has not been good enough. And the expectations is going to continue to grow. The pressure is going to continue to grow. And it's up for Real Madrid to show that it's up for Mbappe to show that he has the bottle to stand up, Because look, some Real Madrid signings in the past have gotten some real criticism after not starting off on the right foot. And, Mbappe, if he starts getting those sort of Galactico criticism, it's going to be, I don't know how he will respond. It'll be interesting to see how he responds. I'm not saying he has a weak mentality or anything like that, but so far, it just seemed like the pressure is getting a little bit to him, and he's not playing a sort of free-flowing football. And you know what? You could say it's probably not Real Madrid at the end of the day. Again, I'll say this again. He did not have a good season by his standards last season. He was not good enough last season. in PSG. He showed up in certain individual moments, but overall as a collective, he was sort of a no-show for PSG last season, not really playing to his sort of potential, you know. Against Borussia Dortmund in the semi-final, he was, as I say, a no-show. He was a no-show for them. You know, he did get 27 goals and 7 assists in League One, but overall in the critical moments, for me, he's been disappointing, and I like to see Mbappe sort of turn this around at Real Madrid, because now look, Real Madrid, they find themselves in a tricky position. They have already dropped points in 2 games. 2 games they've already dropped points. You know, and I was criticizing Atletico Madrid yesterday. If you want to compete with Real Madrid and Barcelona, you need to take advantage of the games that, you know, you're supposed to win. Well, again, Real Madrid so far, they've had 2 away games that they're supposed to win, Mallorca and Las Palmas, and they drew both games 1-1. And in this game, it took them like a sort of a lucky, freakish penalty to get back into this one. And in both games, in my opinion, it's been the same issues. No real lack of energy, no runners in behind, nobody committing. You don't see those clever midfield runs. It's lackluster in terms of the way they move the ball around. They move the ball so slow and so predictable. And once in a while, you know, you should take a risk and play that forward ball. You know, it seems like nobody is willing to sort of play that forward ball. Toni Kroos was a magician at sort of composing the game and once in a while hitting those balls in between the lines to spring an attack. They don't have that player right now. You know, Luka Modric, he came into the 11 today and quite frankly, he couldn't get anything going. He was pretty, in my opinion, he was pretty poor. Brahim Diaz, he started off the right-hand side, and you know, yes, it gives you a little bit of balance in the fact that you have a natural left footer in there, as opposed to Rodrigo. But overall, they didn't make Real Madrid's attack look any more fluid. They still look lackluster. The service was still off. I thought defensively, Real Madrid, they've been pretty solid as expected with having Rudiger, Militao, you know, Courtois. That's your sort of triangle in the back. You know, that's a really, really strong triangle. And they did concede that goal early. But yeah, overall with Real Madrid, I think it's the sort of same issues that you have from Mallorca. Speaking of that goal that they conceded early, I do think it was a sort of a lack of concentration in that back line. You know, I'm not saying this is, you know, something that we should expect. I do think Militao, you know, not blaming Militao necessarily for the goal, but he did look, you know, it's him and Tchouaméni who kind of get caught, and he did look a little bit, you know, lack of agility. And I think it will take a little bit more time for Militao to really adjust, because that is a hard injury to come from. Yeah, obviously a disappointing result for Real Madrid. My biggest takeaway here, though, is, you know, Kylian Mbappe. He needs to figure this out for Real Madrid. He needs to figure this out for Real Madrid, because if he doesn't, big sort of criticism and pressure is going to continue to mount and grow on him. And right now, what he needs to do is try to smooth everything, you know, over, so there's you know, those criticisms don't come. Aurelien Tchouaméni, I have to say, Aurelien Tchouaméni so far in this game was not great enough. It was not good, you know. He struggled since the start of the season, so he's someone that needs to pick up an issue. And then also another thing was Vinicius being the first choice penalty taker. That's interesting with Kylian Mbappe being there. I thought Kylian Mbappe at PSG, he was the first choice penalty kick taker. And yeah, I don't know. That's an interesting headline as well to talk about. But yeah, overall poor result from Real Madrid, and we'll see how they respond as they go on to take on as they move on to face Real Betis this Sunday back at the Bernabeu. In which they've had so far, they had their only win this season at the Bernabeu. So maybe that change of environment will help them. Short break here coming up. When we come back, we'll discuss the most exciting Champions League group stage games.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Before the break, we talked about Real Madrid drawing with Las Palmas. We move on to discuss some of the more exciting 2024-25 Champions League group stage games. As the draw happened, we discussed a little bit about it in the first segment, but this is the segment where we really break down which biggest matchups there are to look forward to, and there's a few. My opinion, no, not in my opinion, but there's some good ones going on actually. I'd say the biggest game will probably be Liverpool taking on Real Madrid. Now this is a pot 1 game, pot 1 versus pot 1. So that's sort of the marquee sort of matchups, the pot 1 games. And look, we know the Champions League history these two teams have had in terms of recent history, going back to the 2018 Champions League final, won by Real Madrid, and then there was the one in the 2020 Champions League, I believe, the sort of COVID Champions League and empty crowds, where they played, I believe, in the quarterfinals or around the I think it was the quarterfinals, in which Real Madrid comfortably got past Liverpool. And then we know what happened in the 2022 Champions League final. Real Madrid again win by defeating Liverpool in the final through Vinicius Jr. And so there's some real history there, and Liverpool will be this game will be at Anfield, so you're expecting an electric Anfield sort of atmosphere. The last time, because keep in mind the game that was played between Liverpool and Real Madrid in 2020, that game in Anfield was behind closed doors. The game at the Bernabeu was behind closed doors as well. So you're expecting, we're expecting, I believe Liverpool and Real Madrid, how many times, didn't they face off each other in the, we'll fact check that, but Liverpool, but this will be the first time in Anfield that there will be, ruckus crowd, that Liverpool and Real Madrid last few times that Liverpool and Real Madrid, they faced off two times in the knockout stages and 2 times in the finals actually. Yeah, they've had a real history, Liverpool and Real Madrid. It's been pretty wild actually. They've played each other a lot. So there's a huge Champions League rivalry there between the two. And Anfield is going to be up in ruckus for this sort of tie, and I look forward to this game quite high. Kylian Mbappe facing off against Liverpool in one of his first Champions League match for Real Madrid. I think this is the opening game for Real Madrid and Liverpool. Is it the opening game? We can fact check that as well. Okay, they don't have it up right now. Okay, they don't have it up actually, but that's gonna be a fascinating tie. So many storylines there, and this is also Arne Slot too. This will be his first major test in the Champions League. So yeah, Liverpool, another big game. Liverpool, Bayer Leverkusen. What a game that will be. Xabi Alonso bringing his Bayern Leverkusen team that finished unbeaten in the Bundesliga. He's going to take them to Liverpool, facing off against his former club. Bayer Leverkusen is a strong team that really will go in there expecting to win based on what we've seen from Leverkusen last season. Liverpool wanting to defend. Where would this game be at? Yeah, this game will be at. We can see it right here actually. Liverpool taking on Leverkusen. They will be home. So yeah, Liverpool, they're fortunate. They will be home taking on Leverkusen. So, Xabi Alonso will be returning back to his old club. Big game coming up here, and that could be a pivotal game as well. PSG taking on Atletico Madrid. These are going to be two teams that are really going to be competing for that same sort of, positioning. They'll be around the same, and not everyone will be able to get into the top 8. So this is a pivotal match. PSG taking on Atletico Madrid, and Atletico Madrid, they're going to keep it compact. They're going to keep it tight. And PSG, they can have the quality through the players of like Ousmane Dembele to break down Atletico Madrid. That's going to be really good, because PSG, they have a horrible schedule. They got City, PSV, Girona, and then they have to are going to Paris. That's difficult, and if they really want to get top 8, Atletico Madrid is almost a must win. Okay. Atletico Madrid, they actually have a weaker draw as well. PSG taking on City, Bayern, Atletico Madrid, and Arsenal. Wow. That's the definition of rough. Wow. That is half of your games going up against elite opposition. And it's really rough, because Arsenal and Atletico Madrid, that's the two worst pot 2 teams basically to get. Arsenal, Atletico Madrid, and Leverkusen. That is, those are the two, any of those 3 are literally the worst pot 2 teams you could get. On top of that, you're facing off against City, Bayern Munich. We don't know about Bayern Munich. They're relatively unknown under Vincent Kompany, but they're still going to be a tough outfit in the Champions League. Even last season, with the weak season they had, they were able to reach semi-final, and they're actually minutes away from reaching the final. Yeah, PSG, they're going to have to earn their way to the final. Real Madrid taking on Borussia Dortmund. Now, look, a lot of people are hyping this up as a Champions League final rematch. I don't see it the same, because I don't believe in this Borussia Dortmund team, this new manager coming in. I have, not that much massive expectations for them in this Champions League campaign. They did start off their season with a win over Eintracht Frankfurt, and, they played some decent quality football, a little bit of some attacking display. They were able to dominate possession, but I want to see a little bit more from Borussia Dortmund but that will be exciting, the fact that we'll play. I think another thing that will be very interesting is Barcelona going away, because Borussia Dortmund, Real Madrid, that game will be played at the Bernabeu. Let's fact check that real quick. Borussia Dortmund, Real Madrid. Yeah, that will be played at the Bernabeu. Borussia Dortmund, Barcelona, another Part 1 game. This will be played at the Yellow Wall. Barcelona with Hansi Flick. German coach is going to go back to the Yellow Wall, in which he's had coaching Bayern Munich. He's had a lot of games playing at managing at the Signal Iduna Park. We know the atmosphere they can create there. Getting to face off Barcelona in the group stages, expect an electric atmosphere. They're very difficult, very suffocating for these Barcelona players, and I want to see how Barcelona can respond to that. How It's going to be interesting now. Robert Lewandowski, he's used to playing at the yellow wall, so I don't think it's going to bother him to an extent. But the rest of these Barcelona players playing in this sort of atmosphere, it'll be very interesting to see. Now, Dortmund, they're, again, there's a relative unknown with them under Nuri Sahin. I still want to see a little bit more of them. Aston Villa get to play Bayern Munich and Juventus as a power 4 team. Look, I'm not gonna lie. I don't worry that much for Aston Villa. Let's go ahead and see. They play Bayern. Okay, so Bayern goes to Villa, and then they play Juventus. Oh, we can't see that here. I'm very interested to see Aston Villa. I want to see Villa Park hosting a Champions League game. If they can generate that sort of atmosphere that a European team struggle with, I expect it to be very not hostile, but very ruckus going up against Bayern Munich, because we know the quality Bayern Munich has. But yeah, that's there's some great matchups. You have Atalanta taking on Celtic. That's also, interesting, not in the fact that they're both, both beaters or any, world beaters or anything. But Atalanta, they're coming off that European League title run where they won the European Cup. And then Celtics, they've been dominating the Scottish League over the past few years, but they've never really done much in Europe. And now they have Champions League to play in, and they have that crazy atmosphere at Celtic Park. They'll be playing this game in Italy, but that'll be interesting as well. You can see the amount of great matchups that I just read on the screen. You don't get that, with the previous Champions League group stages. We get some boring matchups some days, and some lifeless matchups. This time around, we're destined to get an amazing game every week almost, which surely should improve the quality of the Champions League group stages, in my opinion. Short break here coming up. When we come back, we will react to Arsenal's reported interest in Raheem Sterling.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Before the break, we discussed the most exciting Champions League group stage games. We move on to react to Arsenal's reported interest in Raheem Sterling. Wow, wouldn't that be something? Look, so we clearly know the issues with Raheem Sterling. He's just not going to play at Chelsea. He's not in the rotation. He's not in the squad. And he's at the point in his career, being 29 years old, that nothing matters more than playing game in and game out. We see the reports that he's sort of desperate to get back into the England squad. He wants to get back into the setup, which I don't blame him. He's 29 years old. How is he already, on the outs of looking in England? How is he already missing European Championship positioning? I don't think the drop-off for Raheem Sterling has been as bad as what people think. I think, he's been okay. He was okay the past year. Wasn't really at the sort of level, but again, him and Chelsea, they didn't fit each other. What those two sort of goals were, and now with Chelsea, they have these sort of ridiculous amount of players, wingers, and they're trying to sign another, which is even more shocking to me. And it's clear he's just not going to get the minutes that he wants at Chelsea, so he's seeking a move elsewhere, which is good. When the Juventus reports was coming out, I thought that was a match made in. a match made perfect for both Raheem Sterling and Juventus. I think Juventus would have gotten that sort of player that can be vertical, that can stretch the line, opposite of Tim Weah, and also be that sort of, the sort of star man in the attack that, Juventus were sort of lacking that star quality and that ability. And then for Raheem Sterling, he would continue to play for a top club, get to play game in and game out for a top club, playing in the Champions League, in these top leagues. So I thought that was a perfect move for them. It doesn't seem like that's on the cards at this point right now, and the fact that Juventus still need, I don't think they'll be able to afford those sort of wages. There's still, reports going on. But, it's clear Chelsea, they're willing to cut bait, and they've allowed, him to seek other teams. And for him, the best thing is him leaving. And now there is that reported interest from Arsenal that came in, which is beyond interesting. Arsenal... they're interested in this is according to reports, for a potential deal for Raheem Sterling, but they're not willing to pay any fee. And Chelsea, they're willing to offload Sterling before the end of the transfer window, and the fact that he's not in Enzo Maresca's plan. Mikel Arteta, he has a relationship with Raheem Sterling. You remember Mikel Arteta was the assistant manager at Manchester City, so they spent some time there, And even though the Arsenal, they're looking at the prospects of a potential deal, they do not want to pay a fee, and it's also reliant on the fact that Chelsea are willing to take a part of his take on a part of his contract and wages, in the fact that he's reportedly making 325 million or 325,000 a week, £1,000 a week at Chelsea. And Arsenal, they're not willing to pay anything over 150,000. So basically, Sterling will have to take a sizable salary cut to join Arsenal, which is expected, in the fact that if Raheem Sterling, if he's truly desperate to get back into the England squad, if he's truly desperate to get back playing at the top level, continuing to play sort of Champions League football and competing for trophies and all that, he will have to take a pay cut. At this point in his career, top teams are not looking for a player like Raheem Sterling in that amount of money. They're not willing to invest that sort of money at this point in his career, at what he is at this stage. And that's something that he himself is going to need to address. But look, let's be honest, Raheem Sterling, I think Raheem Sterling, it could be a benefit for Arsenal. I think that extra element of a little bit more goals and assists, a little bit more verticality. I think overall, I think he's good squad depth in the team. I think he's, he could challenge for a spot in the starting 11. I definitely think he'll challenge Martinelli if he can, sort of regain the confidence that he had, in that first year because that first year he played at Chelsea, I thought, quite frankly, he had a pretty good season. And he made the World Cup squad that year. And he was a starter for England at the World Cup. So yeah, I could see why, Mikel Arteta, the fact that he knows him, I can understand why he would want Raheem Sterling. I really do. I think that would be a good move for Arsenal, contingent on, because look, you're not paying £325,000 a week for someone that's going to come in to make your squad better. It's obviously contingent on whether or not he's willing to take that sort of, salary cut. If he is willing to take that salary cut, I think this is a sort of almost a no-brainer for Arsenal. I really do. I think he'll definitely improve the squad. And I think he's a sort of player that can challenge for a position in the starting 11 if he can get his act together. Other talks, that other reports have talked about Arsenal having talks with Ivan Toney's agent, as they're, talking about a potential approach for him, which I think, as I said yesterday, I think that would be a big addition for Arsenal if they can get in a guy like Ivan Toney, because I think Ivan Toney will improve Arsenal more than someone like, Mikel Merino, who they have also signed. I think in terms of next season, wanting to compete, get over the line over Manchester City, I definitely think having an game in, game out sort of striker, Ivan Toney, that's proven in the Premier League, will get you closer to the Premier League title than Mikel Merino would. And they're around the same value right now in terms of transfer value. They're around the same value. Ivan Toney, as the days go, his transfer value is slowly deteriorating. I saw a report right now that Brentford are expecting only around 35 million euros or so for him. That's a ridiculously low value for someone who's a proven goal scorer in the Premier League. And there's also reports with him being linked with the move to Saudi. Because almost the fact that, there's clubs almost basically running, the top clubs are almost running out for Ivan Toney, and now the Saudi thing is out there. But for me, Ivan Toney, it'd be a shame for him to go to Saudi because he has so much football left at the highest level, and he could really be competing for, real trophies. He's never played in the Champions League before. That's, he's 28 years old and he's never played in the Champions League before. He deserves to play Champions League football, in my opinion. He deserves to play Champions League football. Ipswich Town, they might look to potentially get a deal for Crystal Palace's Odsonne Edouard, because Armando Broja, he failed a medical with Ipswich, which has sent him back to Chelsea with him failing the medical. Tough break for him. Nketiah, there's reports saying Nketiah is set to join Crystal Palace. That also why the Crystal Palace is willing to part ways with Odsonne Edouard. It's reported that Ipswich are not completely closed off to an approach for the Palace forward if he's not currently a priority target for the club. Victor Osimhen apparently is closer to a move to Al Ahly rather than Chelsea, reports say. I don't know if I believe that. This report came from a journalist I really don't know much about. But, it's difficult. Juventus and United have still not reached an agreement for Jadon Sancho. Chelsea are still monitoring the situation, but it seems like Chelsea have found themselves in a position that they need to sell to get Jadon Sancho. And they need to sell. Again, I asked this question. Is Jadon Sancho necessary for Chelsea Football Club right now at this moment with the amount of wingers that they have? Pedro Neto, Cole Palmer, who can also play in that position. Nkunku that can play in that position. Okay, hold on. Pedro Neto, Nkunku that can play in that position. João Felix that can play in that position. Cole Palmer that can play in that position. Mikhailo Mudryk. There's so many players that can play on the wing for Chelsea Football Club. Nani Madueke. You have Nani Madueke, Mikhailo Mudryk, Pedro Neto, already out-and-out wingers. And then you have all these sort of players like Nkunku, João Felix. Okay, Cole Palmer is a 10, but Nkunku, João Felix, they're going to primarily play off the sort of wings because you cannot play both of them as number 9s, especially already with Nicholas Jackson in there. A lot of their minutes are going to come from playing off the wings. There's just not, what is Jadon Sancho actually, providing for Chelsea that they don't already have? I don't know. But I'm not here to talk about Chelsea's transfer strategy. Short break here coming up. When we come back, we'll react to some of the top soccer headlines. Before the break, we discussed Arsenal's reported interest for Raheem Sterling. We move on to react to some of the top soccer headlines going on in the soccer world. Mason Mount. The Manchester United injury sort of list continues. We already know during preseason, Rasmus Højlund and Lenny Yoro both suffered injuries that took them out for the start of the season. Lenny Yoro's being a little bit more severe. You know, Luke Shaw, Tyrell Malacia, Victor Lindelof, they've also all been out for injuries so far this season. And now Mason Mount joins that list. Mason Mount, he started both of United's games this season. He was subbed off actually at halftime in this past weekend as they were defeated by Brighton with that late goal. And it was reported, it's said that the injury that he suffered was in the game. And yeah, that's a bad loss for United, him being sidelined for a few games, because for him, with this muscle injury, all he needed was a set of run at Manchester United. He didn't have the sort of set of run to sort of build momentum and started getting a rhythm of play, to settle in with Manchester United. He hasn't had that since he's got. Last year, he was injury riddled all season. Now this time around, he starts up again, and it's interesting. I don't remember. I thought Mason Mount wasn't really injury prone at Chelsea. In fact, he was one of the few players that played game in and game out. We had a few injury prone players, Christian Pulisic and so on. But Mason Mount happened to be the player that, would play game in, game out. And since he's got to United, he just hasn't been at it. Just suffered so many injuries and hasn't really been at his level. Mason Mount, he wrote on social media saying, "During the last game, I picked up a minor muscle issue. I've had it checked and it looks like I'll be out for a few games. Leading up to and during preseason, I worked hard to get my fitness back to where it needs to be, and I feel re-energized, sharp, and ready. I want you to hear it directly from me, how frustrated I am, as I expect you are too. I will do everything possible to be back in the best shape and help the team." Speaking of Mason Mount, he was actually not involved in the squad that Lee Carsley announced that take on Ireland in Dublin and then Finland at Wembley 3 days later in the Nations League. Speaking of that squad, interesting squad came out. Some inexperience involved in this sort of squad. A lot of some of these sort of youth players. For the squad, England's first squad since the European Championship. Obviously, Lee Carsley, he's going to be that sort of interim coach. And there's no Kyle Walker involved, and we have some new call-ups like Morgan Gibbs-White, Livramento, Angel Gomez, who are all going to be getting their debuts. Jack Grealish, he's back involved in the English setup. Ivan Toney, Lewis Dunk, Adam Morton, who are all involved in the European Championship squad under Southgate. They've all been omitted as well. Interesting squad as I read it. So goalkeepers: Dean Henderson, Jordan Pickford, Nick Pope. No real surprises there. Jordan Pickford will continue to be England's number one. Mark Gahey, Ezri Konsa, John Stones, Trent Alexander-Arnold, Levi Colwill, Rico Lewis, Tino Livramento, and Harry Maguire. He's back in, or not really back in. He was never really dropped, but he's going to be involved in the English setup this international window. Midfielders: Conor Gallagher, Kobe Mainu, Declan Rice, Cole Palmer, Morgan Gibbs-White, Angel Gomez, and Phil Foden. No Jude Bellingham, obviously, because of the injury, which opened up possibility for Angel Gomez or Morgan Gibbs-White to sneak into the squad. And then the forwards: Jared Bowen retains his position from the European Championship. Eberechi Eze as well. Grealish gets back in. Anthony Gordon, Harry Kane, Bukayo Saka, Watkins. Jack Grealish gets back in replace for Ivan Toney. And yeah, overall, there's a lot of similar players from this European Championship. Kyle Walker being dropped is interesting. Maybe they just don't, they know what they're getting with Kyle Walker and they want to see Tino Livramento, get him a shout, see what he's like. But, you don't want to alienate your sort of veteran players. I think Kyle Walker's experience will be very critical. I think, despite him aging, if the pace is still there and if he's still playing this sort of, this at the level, I don't think that's someone that should just be forced out of the England setup. I think his experience is still pivotal for this sort of team, whether or not it's starting or not. Because I definitely think Trent Alexander-Arnold should be the starting right back in for England. He is the most talented fullback in the world, and you would be a fool. Gareth Southgate was a fool to overlook him, and so many times, game in and game out, and I think he'll be pivotal for them. Andrea Pirlo sacked as Sampdoria manager just after one season. He has been sacked for in charge. The Serie B club said it on Tuesday. Sampdoria. They started the season with a draw and 2 losses, and they're second to bottom in the table in Serie B. Pirlo, he was actually previously in charge of Juventus. He, eventually they sort of mutually parted ways, and then he took charge of Fatih Karagümrük in Turkey, but only spent 1 year there. And then he was appointed as Sampdoria manager last June, with the mission of bringing them back to Serie A, since they were relegated from Serie A. But they weren't able to get promoted to Serie A. In fact, they weren't even close. They finished 7th place, and they ended up getting knocked out by Palermo in the first round of the promotion playoff. And so he was already on a short limb, because the mission was to get them back into Serie A. And after starting the season off with a draw and 2 losses, it was bound to happen. And sometimes the great players don't make great managers, and that's kind of what we're seeing here with Andrea Pirlo, even with Thierry Henry at France. Sometimes that's just what it is. Barcelona has signed U.S. youth international Pedro Soma. Barcelona, they completed the signing of the United States international. The man is Soma, who's born in Florida. He's going to initially play for the U19 youth setup, but he could also potentially move up to the B team, Barcelona B team. He's not the only American that's playing at part of the Barcelona youth setup. Diego Cochin, the goalkeeper, Adrian Simon Hill is also part of the setup. We've seen a lot about the prospect Adrian Simon Hill. I'd like to see how he takes the next level as he starts being an 18-year-old. So Somo was born to a Brazilian mother and an American father, but he actually relocated to Barcelona in 2018, and now he got moved up to the setup there, and he's actually been playing for the U.S. at the U16, U17, and U18 level. And in fact, at the last year's U17 World Cup, he played 3 games as the U.S. lost in the round of 16 to Germany 3-2, who ended up to go on to win the tournament. So it's good to see that the U.S. continuing to develop these sort of youth players, and now with Mauricio Pochettino coming in, there's some high hopes in terms of getting those youth players and getting some results out of it. Ancelotti came out saying, was a little critical, but he came out saying there needs to be change fast after they had that disappointing 1-1 draw to Las Palmas. Ancelotti said this team must find an improvement fast. It was a bad first half. It was hard for us to find the goal. We had to hang on, suffer a bit. The team wasn't balanced. We weren't moving the ball quickly. It was hard for us to win the ball back. Everything that happened in the draw against Mallorca, I didn't see an improvement in the team. We must find an improvement fast, and I think we will find it. it's been hard for us to find the solidity we had last year. We can't look for excuses. We have to improve fast. We have another game on Sunday. I have to be clearer in the strategy on the pitch to give clarity to the players. It's been harder for us than we thought. The 3 games have shown me a lot of things that aren't going well. And yeah, there's issues with Real Madrid, and they do need to improve fast because they don't want to get caught too low in the table where they're having to sort of make a late season push to win La Liga. That's not where they want to find themselves in, because Barcelona are looking good right now, I have to say. Thank you guys for tuning into the GSMC Soccer Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show and leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. Thank you once again, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Let's go. I wake up to a little